Well, hello there. Take two is what this turns out to be. Welcome. I know it is Tuesday. I know it is, I don't even know what day it is, actually. Today's date. I'm going to actually have to Google today's date. Today is Tuesday, October 20th, 2015. This is the Monday Morning Analyst. Now, I know we did this yesterday, but if you watched yesterday, and I took the video down immediately, so I'm sure most of you missed it, it was an epic disaster. I tried out some of the new equipment. You can see some of it behind me. In terms of additional stuff that will happen with it, which is why it's sitting there. But it didn't work. So I remain undeterred. We will get it going, but I can't not do the podcast this week. So here we are rolling forward. That's all I'll say about it for now. And yes, the live chat will happen tomorrow as well. Okay, so on today's Monday Morning Analyst, we'll just do really one event and then one quick note. World Series of Fighting 24 took place over the weekend, headlined by a welterweight clash between Jon Fitch and Yushin Okami. We'll delve into a bit of the main card of that with a nice little twist I'm going to try and add. And then I'll just make a quick opening statement about Rico Verhoeven getting into MMA. The podcast has 3 parts. Part 1, opening statement. Part 2, technical breakdown. And then Part 3, a look ahead. I'll try to keep this under 30 minutes if I can. Okay, so let's go ahead and kick off part 1 with our general overview, our bigger statement if we can. I don't have the video here. I'm not going to try and play it. I'm not going to try and link it. But Rico Verhoeven, the Glory heavyweight champion, competed in MMA over, I think yesterday or, a day or two ago. In any case, the video is out there floating around if you want to find it, and I recommend you take a look at it. For a couple of reasons. I think, one, we all know that heavyweight is one of these divisions where the elderly kind of feed off the young. It would be nice to see a heavyweight prospect being able to excel up the ranks. Obviously, we have to take it, fight by fight. If we're going to pump the brakes on people who with such upside as Sage Northcutt, certainly have to pump the brakes on someone like Rico Verhoeven, who has a lot of kickboxing ability, but we don't really know so much about his ground. His opponent did not look particularly good, had virtually no half guard. Rico was able to just essentially just step over. What didn't have to control the hips or the head and the neck at all, just kind of just stepped over into mount. From mount, he tried to buck and then do the bit where the legs come in front and they try and pull you back. But those are, you have to be really flexible to do that. It didn't seem to know how to bridge properly, which is kind of interesting. So, there's not a lot you can say about him, but, that's not Rico's fault if that guy doesn't look good. It's his own fault. And Rico did everything that was essentially asked of him. It didn't look like, although he had maybe some issues with the small gloves in terms of working on his own defense or, I think just a little surprised about the power of those things. I don't think he has a ton of work in with them, although obviously he's worked with the Black Zillions and other teams in the past. But I guess I would say he looked good from mount, had good timely high mount, good ground and pound, given the rule set. Tried to go with a trip one way, couldn't, and then switched to the other. I thought that was a little of a nice adjustment from the body lock. So we'll see how it goes, man. Long way to go for him. But I guess my opening statement would only be that heavyweight could really benefit from any kind of youngish, in Rico's case, contender moving to the top. And one thing that's sort of interesting to me about Rico that doesn't really get discussed when you talk about him, I had a discussion with him for a long time, a private conversation just before his fight with the rematch with Errol Zimmerman. This was in Hampton, Virginia. And so one thing I took away from the conversation was, Rico's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder, right? That he feels like he's a little bit disrespected and is deserving of more and things like that. And he definitely carries that into the cage, or the cage in this case, but the ring and Glories. He doesn't, if you just sort of watch what he says in public, you don't really get a sense of that. It's only when you talk to him in private that he's, not that this is a huge sort of centerpiece of his life or that he's, that this should define his identity. All I'm simply saying is just a little bit more of an edgy wrinkle to him that I'm not sure a lot of people are aware of. And if you can take that to MMA and then skill build on top of that, he's just got a lot of the right pieces to make things work. Again, that's hugely speculative. We have to take it fight by fight. But I like what I saw. I like what I know from him. And here's to hoping he can make some actual, wrestling, grappling, skill development and turn into something special at heavyweight. Lord knows that division could use it. Okay. Part 2. Let's break down some of the technical action. So there's only really one event to get to. And I just wanted to do this podcast because we didn't do it last week. I didn't want to go a couple of weeks without it. I apologize for all the technical difficulties yesterday, but here we are. We're going to give it one more try, the best that we can do. So World Series of Fighting 24 took place on Saturday, October 17th at the Foxwoods Resort and Casino in Mashantucket, Connecticut. I don't have any attendance figures or gate numbers for you. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that the fighter of the card for me, a.k.a. akin to the man of the match in soccer, would be Vinny Magalhaes, which we'll get to as his fight comes up. The event was headlined by a non-title welterweight fight between Jon Fitch and Yushin Okami. Jon Fitch winning via unanimous decision, and I made this mistake yesterday as well. Let me pull up the results so you can get the actual judges' scorecards here. Okami lost to Fitch with scores of, Fitch won 29-28 and then 2 30-27s. All right, so what happened? Not a ton in this bout exactly. It wasn't a barn burner, but there were a couple of nice moments in each round you could look to and say that's something worth being noticed. So there was a moment where Fitch was getting pressed into the fence. So if you look the two guys had opposite stances. Okami was kind of pressing, but one of the problems Okami was having was he was just kind of incrementally, not crow hopping exactly, but just kind of incrementally stepping, which gave Fitch the chance to punch and circle out or launch offense of his own or just stay moving. Because if you give Okami a moving target, he doesn't have a lot to do with you. He likes to back you up. He likes to freeze you. He likes to inch on you and then make you stay still and then launch an attack. He has a little difficulty when guys are mobile or they can push back on him and counter him. So that was one thing that Fitch did mostly well. But one time, Okami was able to get him back, his back to the fence. It was kind of interesting. So you see Okami try and get in. Let me get so I can see myself here. Trying to get that. You can hear my dogs barking. Hit that C grip. Either way works. No matter which way you want to try. You see him try and get that. Can't quite do it, or he's getting close, can't quite do it. And one thing that Fitch is doing really well, and if you go back and you watch, you might miss it. I think he does it 2, maybe 3 times in total. But what he does is you see him with left overhook, right underhook. Okami's trying to get his hands together. You see Fitch pull up with the overhook. You see him, he pulls, and then just enough, kind of like a tea kettle, kind of tries to pour him over while he scoots his hips out to the side. It's not a huge movement. He doesn't yank, and step out. It's very little. It's just enough to get like that. Just enough that if you're here and you're struggling and someone does it, you go back. That's all it is. It's just a separation of that, but it's a deterrent for someone's mental attitude about if I can't get this, if I can't get close enough, I'm going to stop. So I encourage you to go back in round 1, watch when Okami puts Fitch against the cage, and watch Fitch get that overhook, use that underhook, pull up, turn, and step his hips out just ever so slightly. He does it 2-3 times, and Okami has to abandon the attack. That was one point about it. And there's another point about it because the roles will be reversed, I believe, in the third round. And I'll get to that when we get to the third round. It should just be noted that small little things like that, Fitch's understanding of the position. One of the things that really I noticed in this was Okami was huge. He made 170. He was a big 185, or he was a monstrous 170 guy. But what I really noticed was that he got technically out-wrestled here. When you see Fitch and Okami lock up in various positions, you can tell Okami's bigger, maybe even a little bit stronger. But that doesn't matter if the strength differential is slightly higher, but the skill gap is way higher. That can make up for so much, and there was just a lot of skill gap there. I really thought Fitch was just a much better wrestler. So that was kind of noticeable. So another thing is, one time Okami does manage to get behind him at the end of that first round, and you see him get his hands clasped together, and he's going to lift. Fitch wraps the outside of his right leg on the inside, or I should say all the way around to the inside of Okami's leg, which kind of acts like an emergency brake. If someone does that, they've attached themselves to you. You can't lift them past. That's a great way to make something happen. So kudos to Jon Fitch for doing that. So then we go to round 2. One thing that I really like that he did, Jon Fitch, to get a setup on a takedown. So he's standing, right hand back, right? He jabs. He jab, crosses, and then he fakes like he's going to jab, changes levels, and goes for a shot. So think about that. You get it, you're bang, eat the jab. And I believe the cross landed, as a matter of fact. It backed him up. Bang, bang, the cross lands. So you're expecting another striking combination, maybe a kick, whatever. You're paying attention now because he got your attention with that right hand when it landed. He also did a good job getting that lead foot to the outside. Remember, we talked about that. If you have two strikers opposite stance, the guy who can get his lead foot to the outside, it opens up that firing lane for the straight power punch. So he lands the right bang and then fakes it, follows it up with a single leg. Great job from Jon Fitch and just staggering the attacks and then differentiating them when they really mattered. Let's see. One little small note. Fitch gets a double, dumps Okami. Not a huge point. Again, we're only talking about little details here, but watch when he drops him in that second round. Boom, scoop slams him. And when he does, his feet come off the ground as his shoulder in the sternum drives him down. He doesn't pick him up and then fall with him. You see Ronda Rousey sometimes crash with people. That's very painful as well. But imagine if she was crashing with a shoulder pointed into things. That's a little bit of what Fitch did. He kind of just drives that shoulder. So that was a nice little detail as well. Let's see. Small little note. Okami tried to time Fitch so Fitch would jab and then cross. When he would hit the cross, what happens, right? Your hips come kind of square, right? Because you're like this, but then when you fire the lead shot, your hips come kind of just a moment in time. They come square as you fire the lead hand, yeah? So when he would do that, Okami would try and time the double, couldn't get it. Fitch would then circle out, which would put Okami closest to the fence, which would reduce his movement, and then Fitch was able to sort of counteract from there, which was a nice little adjustment he was able to make. Fitch actually got one takedown. Nothing too spectacular. Just hands clasped together, picked him up and dropped him. But then landed in side control. He elected to move to half guard. Now we know about half guard for Randy Couture. Guys like to sit there. They like to control. They can wrap a leg. It reduces people's guards. It makes it harder to stand. It's a lot of good things in mixed martial arts. It doesn't have quite the same power in pure grappling, but it's very good in mixed martial arts. So we already know that. But it was interesting, if you watch Okami with just his one leg, is almost able to propel himself backward with Fitch on top in half guard to roll out. They were almost vertical. So you can imagine what he could have done with two legs. So it was a good choice by Jon Fitch to do that. He goes back into half guard again later against the fence. So I think it was more just that, I like the security of that position. Let's see. So there was one moment where Okami did actually a pretty good job for the most part about getting back to his feet, or at least creating scrambles to make Fitch second guess things. But one thing he did is what I'm talking about when I say technically out wrestled, because Okami has a lot of chances to return the favor. It never really does. Okami gets back to his base, so his hands and his knees. He puts a foot up to stand. When he does, Fitch wraps the head, wraps the back of the leg, and gets a cradle together. Now, it was hard to see what he was using to grip the cradle, because that wasn't so clear. What was interesting was that you see Fitch, because Okami rolls, Fitch tries to follow him on the roll and gets kind of slouched off the side. You see him trying to anchor himself, getting that far hook in. Can't quite get it. So what he does is he actually winds up saying, I'm going to abandon this angle. I'm going to go over to this angle. I'm going to drive my head over for like that Juji Katami that Ronda Rousey like, shin behind the head, one underneath the body here, the other side of the arm, and then you roll them, right? And you see Nick Newell tried the same thing at Tom Marcelino, which we'll get to a little bit later. Can't quite get it because he has his arms wrapped in a weird way. When you have that Juji Katami, I believe you have to have the outside arm wrapped like this, and he kind of had the reverse of it. So it didn't quite, he couldn't quite turn, but it completely immobilized Yushin Okami from standing or from additionally rolling or a lot of other things as well. Let's see. Okay, then you move to round three. Not a whole lot in round three to talk about. Fitch gets backed up with a jab, and as Okami tries to close the distance, he does like a matador and steps to the side. Okami comes this way, and so Fitch immediately drops for an angle or drops on a leg and gets the single. So I'm talking about when I say like technically out wrestled, right? And here's a couple of other points where so he gets the takedown, then gets the cross face immediately, and then other leg on the far side leg, sort of driving his hips flat, driving his shoulders flat, bang, flat on the mat, right? Again, goes back to half guard, elects to move into half guard. So here's another situation. So Okami gets back to his feet. Fitch gets back to his feet. and then does something kind of cool. Okami tries to shuck him off and can't in the same position. Remember Fitch before, overhook, underhook, lift, turn, hips out. Okami couldn't do the same thing. So what does Fitch do? Fitch triangles his legs standing and then almost does like a sit out for a standing inside trip. So you do an inside trip. What are you doing? You actually turn, if you're facing here, you'll have your various underhook series going on. You'll actually have your hips to one way. So let's say I'm going to scoot with my left leg. I'll have my hips kind of facing to the side. I'll hook, and then when I turn and drop at the same time, right? Hook the leg and then turn and drop at the same time to get them really off of their feet. He does that, except he triangles his legs beforehand and then just dives his body over. It's like his legs are running the pipe for him. Remember running the pipe, you got the leg, got it between you, got your elbows pinned, you got your knees pinched together, you got their leg between your legs, right? You drive over with the shoulder, drop your hands to the ankle, so you put pressure on the full thing, take a step out, circle, bang, running the pipe. That's that single leg finish. He almost does that. It's like a running the pipe slash trip that he does by triangling his legs and then just dropping out to the side. Kind of a neat little thing that he does there. And then there's one moment where the roles are reversed again, right? Fitch is trying to scramble to his base. Okami's kind of on top. Fitch gets 1 foot up, but there's no guillotine attempt from Okami, and there's no cradle attempt from Okami. So what happens? They separate. So I'm talking about, man, Fitch just was a step ahead on the wrestling. He was just a better wrestler than Yushin Okami that night, and that's why he won. Okay, in the co-main event, Blagoy Ivanov defeated Derek Meeman at 4:33 of the second round via TKO. Not a whole lot to say about this bout. It wasn't that great. Ivanov, the key for him was landing the right hand. It was being a little more active, was a lot of pressure backing up Meeman. Ivanov didn't do a great job of getting that outside lead foot. I noticed. I watched the fight twice now, and I just never got a good sense that was what happening. That being said, the power hand was really landing for him, and it was actually what closed the show in the end. It was able to get push him back and get Meeman reacting. Meeman was just on a lot of 1-2s, so it was kind of easy to counter. Meeman would paw with his jab, and Ivanov would explode over the top with a right to catch him. So that was doing pretty well. Meeman started out the second round kind of backing him up and having a little more success, but eventually the tide turned and went back to Ivanov's way. But not a lot technically that would really impress me there to talk about. Since this is his last fight, we'll talk just a little bit about also on that main card, Nick Newell defeating Tom Marcelino via a unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board. A little bit of controversy in that third round. But the first 2 rounds, pretty decently strong rounds for Nick Newell. Not a lot of damage, which he attested to and admitted, but positional control, I think, certainly won in that fight. And you all know his reasons for retiring at this point. So a couple of things that he does really well. So he's got full use of his right arm, and the left arm is the one that had the congenital amputation. What I really like from him is if he's got an underhook on the right side with the full arm, and someone's beginning to pummel back in and reestablish it, he cracks you in short range with his left. I really kind of like that because you're not expecting it. You probably already have the underhook here from what you can do with it, but he can kind of slip it over the top. This is one of those situations where people might say, oh, he has an advantage. And in that particular circumstance, I wouldn't say he has an advantage because he can't ever get full inside control on you. But in that one particular instance where if he has right underhook, you're driving your left underhook to reestablish inside control on that side, you can get popped at close range without even sort of realizing that you're in danger. So he does do stuff like that. But again, you can't establish any inside control. It's hard to take down from any kind of body lock. You can go for the legs. It's a little bit easier because you can pinch them together, but it's really hard to get any kind of crunch on the body that matters. So like that is a total disadvantage. In addition, when you watch him strike, he just looks like he's so off balance because he has no real defense on this side. He has to wave this out. Guys can come underneath and cut angles on him. They can come over the top with his if his jab is kind of lazy. So he has so many disadvantages. Like when you watch Nick Newell, and it's the first time I ever sort of not that I didn't realize it, but when you really put it together by examining tape on him, you begin to really notice that any argument that he has a net advantage because of his congenital amputation is just so ludicrous. There are particular circumstances here or there where he has a little bit of an advantage. He's hard to Kimura on that side, obviously. There might be no armbar available at all on that side, so he has that kind of thing going on. But that inability to do anything with that left arm necessary for grappling, which is really where he excels. The striking is all very functional for him. It's just so ludicrous. There's so much he can't do as a consequence offensively, and so much that makes him liable defensively, that any sort of small nook or cranny where he has a bit of an advantage is really canceled out. So there was one moment where he gets like a double in place. He just picks Marcelino up and then drops him at just a little bit of an angle. Has the left arm, the short left arm behind one knee, and kind of picks up on the other one, and then drops him down, but just at a bit of an angle, which kind of causes Marcelino to stumble and fall. He lands in I think half guard, easily passes the side, gets him out in a transition, tries to get a guillotine, can't, and then tries to use that as Marcelino rolls for that belly down Russian Jujikatami. Maybe it is that outside arm. I haven't done it in a while, so now I kind of forget the details a little bit. What arm would I use to go for? Maybe it is that outside arm. I can't remember. I'll have to check that out. I've forgotten now on the details for that arm bar. Maybe it's that one. Whatever. Long story short is, one of the keys to that is the shin is behind the head, because what you're doing is you have one leg on their torso, like right underneath here across their body, and the one on the shin in the back of the head. What's happening is you're supposed to be rolling, and the shin should be pushing their head in and turning them, while your other leg kind of lifts them over. So you can imagine you have to hit this kind of quickly. You gotta pop into position, and he kind of got stuck there. So you see him driving Marcelino's head in, but he can't quite go. Marcelino jumps to the other side, and then a full rotation actually to get out of it. So he does a good job escaping. So it was a good initiative by Newell, but on that finish with that shin's got to be driving that head underneath him, and he just can't. He got kind of, once you get locked, if you have a car going really fast through a piece of mud, you may slip and slide, but your chances of going through it are pretty good. But if you slow down and you stop in the middle and then try and restart, it's going to be hard getting out of there. Some of these positions, some of these armbar transitions are like that, which is why Rousey likes these big movements, but she explodes into them. You know what I mean? So that was it. Let's see. Again, I'm not going to talk too much about round 3. One little note in round 2. Again, Marcelino was caught in side control. One thing he did I thought that was kind of cool was he had, if you have a guillotine and someone jumps to the other side, you need to let go because you're going to get Von Flue choked, right? And you're not doing anything to them. He actually doesn't, but he does something. He did something I like, which is, so Newell's legs are here, his legs are here. He ties up one so that he can scoot up underneath, which will then give him space to scoot both underneath and then face him. Now, it doesn't actually work. He can't quite get. But if you go back and watch the outside leg of Marcelino, he uses this to tie Newell up, and then he uses this to try and scoot his hips underneath. Doesn't exactly work. Marcelo Garcia is the king of this from Butterfly. So he has a bunch of videos on this. I think you can look up recapturing guard with Marcelo Garcia. He's got a bunch of stuff like this where you hold one leg and then use the other one to scoot in, which then use your whole body to scoot in. Good initiative by Tom Marcelino in there. Didn't quite make it work, but I appreciated the effort that he put in there. Let's see. Oh, and then there was a Granby roll across his shoulders when he was actually inside control to, I think, reestablish position or at least change the angle. So again, a Granby roll is not across your back, but across your shoulders. And he initiates it and rolls it to reset the angle, but Newell followed through and stayed on top. All right, so I'm going to try something here. God help me. So one thing I'm going to try and do is up next is Vinny Magalhaes versus Matt Hamill. And Vinny won this via knee bar, I think at just 108 of the first round. So I was going to break this down, but I had a few questions about it myself because I didn't have I didn't think the camera angles were very good. So I called Vinny. And I said, Vinny, how did you do this? What do you think about this? I'm going to try and play that now. I hope to God this works. So let me share my screen here. Let's see. Let's go to this. Let's share this. Okay. So this is a video I put up that's my conversation with Vinny. Let me play that for you, And let's see how that goes.
The way I looked at it, I'm looking at it here. You guys are clinched up, and then you kind of I'm not sure if did you intentionally go to the ground, or did you trip? How does that work?
Well, kind of like when you're actually trading punches, he got him with an uppercut, which didn't it didn't daze me or anything, but he kind of threw your punch, right? And then that's when I started to clinch up. And when I went to the clinch, I had a really sloppy clinch situation. And then he went for a snap down. When he went for the snap down, he got me off balance. And I just kind of just went with it, So instead of just having him snap me down, putting whatever you wanted, I felt like he was putting that pressure down. I just went with it, and I tried to put myself in an armbar situation as soon as I got to my back.
Right. So he throws a left, and you go for the armbar. He stands up, and then you grab a left hand on his right leg, and then what was the plan there? Like, you were going to go for a knee bar automatically, or you were going to go try to set up single?
No, the way I set it up, it was more for the knee bar. It was pretty much that was pick up that for the knee bar. As a matter of fact, you were drilling that same move in the locker room, and I said, "I posture yourself." In my assumption, you if you've gotten in guard, you either try to posture all the way up, or try to stack as hard as you could and just try to stall. So I just saw those two scenarios in the fight, and he did exactly one of the things that I thought he was going to do, which was try to posture up, and he was posturing up off an armbar, and that's exactly the move they ended up at, because usually when I set up the armbar, let's say I'm standing up on the left side, he usually leaves that underhook on the opposite side. So pretty much it was not that I planned to do that move in the fight, but that was a move that was already training in case if it happened.
Got it. Okay. So then he kind of gets off balance, and then he gets back to his base. And then at this point, you're pulling him. You're basically pulling him on top of you, or / over you. You get your left leg over the top, or in between his two legs, and he tries to spin, right? But when he spins, he never gets a crossface in there. What, from your judgment, what mistake did he make there when he spun?
Well, I just watched the fight. The thing is, the way he spun around, he seemed more like he was working heel hook defense. That's what I would do too. If somebody's attacking a heel hook, I'm gonna go for that spin. The thing is, I didn't even try to set up a heel hook. I didn't have, my whole thing was just straighten his knee and go for the knee bar. So I think the spin would have been a right technique for a different move, but not for the knee bar. When he went for the spin, he just pushed himself away even further, which just made it easier for me to force that finish.
There's a moment there, because it's a bad camera angle. I mean, obviously you have a different perspective. There's a moment there where you're setting up the knee bar. You haven't really applied it. It looked like he was trying to fight your hands. He's got his right hand posted on the mat. And then interestingly, he's got his right leg entangled with what appears to be your left leg. Was there an intentional extra foot entanglement there, or is that just sort of coincidence?
No, that's just how I set up the move. I try to make sure when I go for knee bars, I have the straps down my legs. So usually I go with both legs around, kind of like I did. But there's no really it wasn't much I just got whatever was available. It is a move that I set up just like you have. So I don't know if you watched my ATC matches, not the Twister one, but the other two finishes are pretty much the same, similar setup. I will throw the guy over my head and go for leg lock. So sometimes it depends how the guy spins. Yeah, I'm gonna be landing a heel hook. Sometimes depending on how the guy spins, I'm gonna be like he said, heel hook. But that way that I did, he just he put himself almost into a knee bar situation by spinning the wrong way. But it's a move that I do. It's pretty much the last 2 months I did it twice in situations, in competition situation.
Okay, and then you finish it here. There's a bit where he's fighting your hands a little bit. He doesn't have a really good angle on it. He's almost like I said, he's posting off of his right hand because he's basically off balance. And then you kind of shuck it off. How did you finish it? What grip did you use on the back of his ankle to finish? I mean, I know it's a knee bar, but what grip did you use with your hands to solidify the finish?
Well, I usually just try to wrap the leg all the way around. The thing is, the way he was trying to fight my hands, was just making it hard for me to put full pressure. So I had to just wrap tight with one arm and try to chew the other one. Once I was able to actually free myself of his hands, that's when I was able to put full pressure with both arms. And at first, I felt like it was locked. He was not going to get out of the move, but I wasn't being able to actually put full pressure to finish. And once I was able to get rid of his hand, then it was kind of just made it a little bit easier.
And then lastly, correct me if I'm wrong, but one thing I noticed here looking at the video, it looks like the knee bar is so deep. You have your ankles crossed below, but it looks like you're pulling with your hamstrings. Is that true as well?
Well, not much. I was pinching really hard with the inside of my thighs, but not much on hamstring really. I try to stay with my legs curled in, so I make sure that I stay tight on the guy's hips, but it wasn't much of that really. Like it was more the pressure on my knees, and I try to pinch my knees and make sure that he's not going to be like the move was not going to get any loose.
Okay, so that was me talking to Vinny. I'll try to make those shorter going forward so they're not 5 minutes in length. I'll put the video in the post on MMA Fighting so you can hear his explanation as well. But I thought that might be a little bit better, just, straight from the horse's mouth to get what he has to say. Give me just 1 second here. Okay, and then last but not least on this card, for the flyweight title, Magomed Babulutov defeating Donovan Freelo. Not a whole lot to say about this one. You knew going in that Freelo, strong, athletic, quick, and explosive, but just sort of offensively unrefined. This was going to be a tall task for him if he couldn't work the wrestling, if he couldn't dominate physically in close quarters and establish the takedown. He was going to have a little bit of trouble here. And even if he could, there was a tall order for him. And even then, he couldn't do that. So, Babulutov coming in, a lot of spinning attacks, which you saw here, but just has that Dagestani full arsenal of takedowns. One time he comes in and Freelo's able to get one underhook. He uses that to switch to Harai Goshi. That's one leg in front of both of theirs. Bang, trips him out, throws him over, tries to move to mount Islam Makhachev. Can't quite do it. He was a little slow with it, but he had that going on for him. He had doubles when he needed them. A lot of times when Freelo was coming forward, using his aggression against him. But, still Babulutov has a long way to go. I think is also very unrefined. But to me, that was really the story of that fight with Freelo, is that if he couldn't establish the takedown, if he couldn't get his hands on Babulutov and lift and dump him, and force him to react to that offense, he was going to have a hard time, and that's basically exactly what happened. Should be noted, Rick Glenn, former champion, actually defeated Adam Ward via KO punches at 127 of the second round in a stoppage so nasty the guy goes stiff, and he steps away before the ref even jumps in. So that was kind of gross. Colton Smith, by the way, former Ultimate Fighter contestant. Did he even win? I can't even remember. Defeated Washington De Silva. I should know that now, shouldn't I? Let's see. Yeah, he won the Ultimate Fighter. Carwin versus Nelson. Wow. God, I can't remember anymore. A weird fight in a 3-round decision. Okay, so what is coming up next? Good question. So this Friday, there's 2 events this weekend. There's Bellator 144 on Friday, and there's Poirier versus Duffy, UFC Dublin on Saturday. There's not a lot to like on these cards. In the main event, Brendan Halsey taking on Rafael Carvalho. That should be a short fight if Halsey doesn't get knocked out, which I don't think he will. Brendan Ward is back, but he's taking on someone he should beat. The key to this one is really going to be Michael Page taking on Charlie Antiveros, which I like Page's chances. The more experience he can get and the more reps he can get, the better off he'll do. So that's the fight to watch for there. And then, of course, on Saturday on Fight Pass, finally another fight on Fight Pass, you've got Dustin Poirier taking on Joseph Duffy at UFC Dublin. The event kicks off at 1, by the way, because it's in Dublin, obviously, and then the main card kicks off at 4 p.m. These are East Coast times. The fights to watch for here is Poirier versus Duffy. That's a really, really important fight for both guys' careers. Paddy Houlihan is back taking on Luis Smolka. That should be a tough fight for him. Norman Park taking on the return of Reza Madadi, and then Nicholas Dalby taking on Darren Till. That should be a fun little main card. Not as much fun on the prelim card. I think actually a lot of people who are only here because they're European, if I'm being honest. A couple of notable names. Stevie Ray is back. Neil Seary is back against John De Los Reyes. That's a tough fight for him. Ashling Daly taking on Erica Almeida. Let's see. Bubba Bush taking on Gareth McClellan. I don't even know why that fight's even taking place in the UFC. Darren Elkins is back. And then your boy, everyone's favorite, Cahal Pendred is back taking on Tom Breeze. So that's what we're looking forward to in the coming up next weekend. My hope is that our technical difficulties are all figured out. We'll have a backdrop. Sound will be fixed. Audio will be fixed. Lighting is already fixed. We'll see what we can do. So if you got a question for me, at SBN Luke Thomas on Twitter, and then email me luke.thomas@sbnation.com. I will do my best to get those questions answered. Thank you so much for watching. Sincerest apologies for all the technical difficulties, and until next time, enjoy the fights.